Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org with a video tutorial for the new Boston. In this video we are going to be looking at the draggable interaction in the jQuery UI. Just a few things to note before we set up. We have jQuery and the jQuery UI included, the JavaScript files, as well as UI.js, which we are going to be working in here. We also have a style sheet set up so we can style the div that we're going to be allowing to be draggable. So we're going to be creating a div area which we're going to essentially create a square from, which we can resize and drag over the page or resize over the page and change some options for this. But we also need to include, which I haven't in previous tutorials in this set, we need to include this CSS file here. Now by all means rename it to something like jQuery UI.css just to keep it a bit cleaner, but it's found in the CSS or the CSS folder, and then in the UI lightness folder that came with your jQuery UI package when you downloaded it. So we need to make sure that this style sheet is included before you start to use the draggable interaction, or the resizable interaction, I mean. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start to create our div. So I'm going to outline this here. I'm going to say div ID, and we're going to give it an ID of box. Now if we go over to our browser, you can see that we can't see anything currently, so we need to go ahead and style this box. So into style.css we need to reference box, and let's go ahead and give this a width of 100 pixels, give this a height of 100 pixels so it's a nice square shape. We'll go ahead and give it a background color as well. This will just be a lightish grey, and we'll also give it some padding as well, so I'll say 10 pixels. This doesn't really matter though. So now that we've got this box, in fact let's go ahead and get rid of padding. We'll just give it a border, so border. It'll be a 1 pixel border, solid and black. And now we have a box with a nice black border. Okay, so the main thing we want to do is first of all just make this draggable, and we're not going to set any options here as well. Now in this tutorial we're not going to be going through events associated with this, because I've already gone through events in the other tutorials in this series, and therefore it's going to be a waste of time creating events and doing something on these events. So depending on your application, you'll want to set specific events that are important to you, and you can find these at the jQuery documentation. So the first thing we want to do in UI.js, which again we've included in our page along with our other jQuery files, we want to go ahead and just make this resizable. So I'm going to use a selector to select box, and then I'm just going to choose resizable. So now that I've chosen resizable, this has applied the interaction to this particular element. So now when we refresh, you'll notice a difference. You now have this sort of square lined resizable, image here. And what we also have is these draggers, if you like, dragging cursors that allow us to drag the box. So now that we have this set up and the aesthetics of this have been created, we can actually go ahead and drag this element anywhere we want. So we can make it smallest, we can make it wider than the window or the document itself, and there's no aspect ratio, so we can resize it to any shape that we want. Now the options we're going to be going through just now, and there's a variety of options, so this is going to take quite a while to look at each one, but they all do something interesting, and I've left some of the options out, but I've left the most interesting and useful options available for us to use. Now as with jQuery interactions, we specify the options between curly brackets, and the first one we're going to take a look at is containment. Now we've seen containment in a few other interactions in jQuery, such as the draggable. However, the resizable also allows for a containment. So I'm going to set the containment, for example, parent. Now at the moment we don't have a parent element to this div. So what I'm going to do is around this I'm going to create a parent element, and this is going to be called bigger box, and let's just indent that in there. So now what we actually have is this element in here, this div here, but we have a larger div. Well, we're going to resize it in just a moment, a larger div that's going to constrain the boundaries of the resize. Okay, so let's go ahead and set some properties for this bigger box in our style.css file. We'll go ahead and reference bigger box. And I'm going to make the width of this much larger, so 400 pixels, and the height, again, we could say 400 pixels. I'm going to set a background color to this as well. This is going to be F0, 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 which is a light grey. And we'll also go ahead and set a border, 1 pixel, solid, and again black. Okay, so let's go over to our browser and refresh, and you can see that we have a larger div here. Now you'll see that I set the containment to parent. Now that the parent element of this div is this larger div here, when we actually resize, we can't go any further than the parent element. So this won't allow the resize to be bigger than the parent element. We can also specify values such as document and window. But for now we're going to stick to parent, because this is a good example of when you resize and you don't want it to come out of a particular area. Now we can also use a max height, a min height, a max width and a min width as well, so a minimum and maximum height and width for each axis, but obviously it's more appropriate to be able to resize within a particular area that you've predefined on your page.